And somebody like him, who's been a Chancellor of the Exchequer and a Prime Minister, whatever you think of him, when he says the system is out of control, people should prick up their ears and listen.
OK, well, talking about the system being out of control, probably the biggest story this week, I don't think there's much doubt about that, is the Mark Duggan inquest verdict this week, which was announced on Wednesday. I've got an article here from The Guardian. This perverse Mark Duggan verdict will ruin our relations with the police. Mark Duggan was demonised by police and the facts of his killing ignored. It seems to be the marginalised live in a parallel, unjust universe. After hearing the verdict in the Mark Duggan inquest, I went with his family, says The Guardian writer Stafford Scott, and friends to a local church in Tottenham where we tried to share a private moment before facing the media. A range of emotions was on display, but it's fair to say that stunned disbelief and anger dominated. Rob, I'm going to ask you first about this because it seems mysterious, I think it's probably the best way to put it, how someone can be shot in cold blood who's unarmed and yet that is a lawful killing, and that the policeman that did it has no court case to answer, no murder charges, manslaughter charges or anything.
Yeah, and we've seen this recently as well with the Ian Tomlinson case, where miscarriages of justice perpetrated by the police haven't been... The perpetrators haven't been brought to justice.
Now, Tomlinson was whacked by a policeman, wasn't he, who subsequently denied it, but then finally it was actually captured on camera, and it was proven that he had whacked this guy who subsequently died. Yeah,
and the Mark Duggan case is another one where... But, again, it's exactly what you said, is that people aren't seen on the same level in our society. They're seen as a different class, and we do have to do something to change that. From my perspective, community relationships need to be improved. Police and public relationships aren't always there to start with. If that's the starting point, I think. And bringing people down to the level, that's the real thing that I see that's quite strong, actually, and it's getting stronger in Bristol sometimes, is that actually sometimes the police are engaging and actually talking to people, but it doesn't happen enough. We need more people to sort of engage and talk around the issue, because too often we have these cases where people have huge miscarriages of justice, and then the justice system fails them.
Well, to be fair, this is the Metropolitan Police, and we're Avon and Somerset Police. Martin, what are your thoughts about the Duggan verdict?
Well, I think the verdict itself does raise questions, because the policeman who shot him was the only witness who claimed that he saw he had a gun. They claimed that he'd thrown the gun away, although there are suspicions that they planted the gun on the scene.
Well, one of the eyewitnesses said that they showed CCTV in the courtroom, and one of the eyewitnesses pointed out that one of the policemen had actually gone to the area after the shooting, and it looked as if he'd just dropped a gun on
there was no crime of scene sealing off of it, as I understand. Now, all of these things raise questions. The other point that this chap made on the television, actually, was that the police were claiming that there was a shootout for 48 hours, and clearly they must have known from the very beginning that there was no shootout. So, in other words, what they're trying to do is get their word in first to spin it all in the right direction. And of course lots of people have been killed in gang violence in London in particular in the last few years. Lots of people get shot, and we could end up like the United States of America, where 11,000 people a year get killed in the United States, 3,000 by the police. If we're going to modernise, and as the Tories want to take us to a more Yankee sort of society, more go ahead, more entrepreneurial, we better get ready to get used to people being shot by the police. But the real problem is that overall, the relationship between the police and black communities in particular over many years has not been good. I would suggest that in Bristol it's actually rather better than it is in other parts of the country, and that we need to build on that insofar as we can. But the real danger with all of this kind of class war from the top, which we were talking about in the last section, is that it is going to boil over. We had 5 people killed in the rioting that followed this event, and that was partly because the police didn't handle the demonstration that went to Tottenham Police Station very well. They started beating up the demonstrators, which kicked the whole thing off. All of these things are tinder waiting to go. And if you can't see major cities in Britain after a banking collapse looking a bit like Northern Ireland or Detroit, then you lack imagination.
Well, one of the things which has been spun by the police on the day of the inquest verdict and yesterday is that they're talking about putting cameras on the police in order to film these sorts of events and make sure all the evidence is there. But I would say, first of all, hang on, you don't need really a camera. You've got nearly 100 eyewitnesses that said the guy didn't have a gun, so why do you need a camera?
Well, the point being made by the sort of more conservative commentators is that it was the jury made the decision, but the jury made a contradictory decision. They decided that he didn't have a gun, but they decided he was lawfully shot. Now, leaving aside the ins and outs of the Duggan case in particular, what is even more important in the wider, there have been many, many deaths in police custody, where, and the Tomlinson case is a fairly obvious
Well, there's
one,
something like 300, Martin, just the figures, about 350 deaths in 12 years. Exactly,
but it's widely believed in the black community and other marginalised communities that their lives don't count. Now, that is a very dangerous thing to take hold. We've already got 1 million young people under the age of 25 in this country without work, and the potential for something really nasty is very definitely there. But I don't think we're going to get anywhere by exaggerating things. The police often get things badly wrong, and sometimes they get them right. They should be praised when they get them right, and we should be absolutely straight with them when they get it wrong.
Rob, Mark Duggan's mum has said that now if anything happens, if she's under threat, she can't phone the police, she doesn't trust them.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing to say to that except that basically the level of trust there has got to be built up again. I mean, it maybe won't happen with her. I don't think she'll ever probably trust the police again. But, I mean, taking an example from this week in Bristol, you know, the EDL came to Bristol in the last week, and we had 24 police officers stopping the anti-fascist protesters against the EDL from getting in between those two groups. And so, you know, from those 24 officers' perspective, I think they did probably their job quite well. So actually, we've got to look to the good examples of policing as well as the bad. And actually, the terrible instance of Mark Duggan, it has to serve as a warning to the police, and they have to do internally. They have to figure out a way of rebuilding that trust again.
Well, after the Lee Rigby killing, for example, the police stopped a small group of EDL people actually going down into Easton, didn't they, as well? So, right. You know, there's all sorts of different aspects to this in different parts of the country. I think maybe, you know, this is something which is particularly...
Well, it's local knowledge by police, which they need, and local knowledge means that different communities will have a different relationship because the police are, you know, they've either got local knowledge or they haven't. I think in London one of the problems is that you've got, you know, it's just too big and there's too much going on.
But even in that case, I mean, the local beat officer in my ward, you know, he's overrun with so many things to do that he doesn't get to do all the things he has to be able to do. I mean, it's partly because of the cuts in police budgets, but it's partly because there's such a diverse number of things that happen in the city now.
Rob, I love you because you've just given a fantastic cue into the Prime Minister's questions, and we're going to go to Prime Minister. You don't even realise that, but you have. And Prime Minister's questions now. We're going to hear from John Mann on that very topic.
John Mann.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Government cuts having closed the police cells in Bassetlaw. I now discover that the police are having to patrol villages using public transport. Which begs a question I'd like to ask the Prime Minister. If the police are waiting at a bus stop, having arrested someone, should they go upstairs, should they go downstairs, or should they not arrest at all?